think we're good.
Welcome, everyone, and happy 2024. My name is Andrea Gillespie, and I am Senior Manager of Community Development at Charles Schwab Bank and your host of Dallas Housing Coalition's Housing for All webinar. Thank you so much for joining us as we start a new year. Today, we are holding our third installment of a new Housing for All series, where we discuss whether Dallas is big, and is it truly big enough for everyone? Our plan is to have brief but impactful one-on-one conversations with DHC members and other community leaders who are among Dallas's strongest advocates for keeping Dallas affordable. Joining us this morning is Ikenna Mogbo. Ikenna is the Chief Housing Officer at Metrocare Services, and he is in charge of the programs that encompass the journey of an individual from homelessness to permanent supportive housing. And he also oversees outreach to the community through peer-supported services. Metrocare is the largest provider of mental health, developmental disability, and permanent supportive housing services in Dallas County, serving over 50,000 children, teens, and adults annually, and has been serving Dallas for over 55 years. Metrocare Services serves the community in many ways, and we are lucky to have them as an active member of the Dallas Housing Coalition. Hi, Ikenna. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, Andrea. Thank you for having me. I always love opportunities to talk about the great work that Metrocare Services does and advocate for affordable housing, mainly for our most vulnerable population. So thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I know time is at a premium for most people, even at the beginning of the year. So we certainly appreciate you coming on and talking with us today. I just want to start it out with just a basic question about Metrocare. I gave a very small synopsis in our intro to the webinar today, but can you share some additional facts about what Metrocare does that folks less familiar with the organization would not already know?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that I would say with no hyperbole that Metrocare Services is one of the most unknown assets in our community. Short answer is that Metrocare Services offers a range of mental health services, including counseling, therapy, crisis intervention, psychiatric care, and support for individuals with developmental disabilities. We work with people of all ages from birth to adults and collaborate with other community resources to enhance overall mental health and well-being. Really, a good analogy for us is that we are the Parkland Hospital of outpatient behavioral health and intellectual development diversity for Dallas County.
That is a really good way for a lot of us who have a hard time holding a lot of information of our mind to think of Metrocare as the Parkland of mental health services, because obviously we know all the good that Parkland Hospital does for the Dallas community. So that's a very good way of holding Metrocare and the importance of the work that it does in our community in our head. So thank you for that. And obviously, in your role with the organization, you sit on the front lines of what is happening with housing stability and mental health, and the intersection of those two issues in the Dallas community. Can you share a little bit of the effects that housing stability has on mental health and other issues Metrocare strives to address, like substance abuse, for example?
Absolutely. Housing instability has significant effects on mental health and substance abuse. Several factors contribute to that relationship. First of all, like stress and anxiety. If you're facing housing instability, you're going to be experiencing high stress and anxiety due to uncertainty about your living situation. The lack of stable housing can lead to constant worry and fear of homelessness, impacting mental well-being over the long haul. Increased vulnerability. People dealing with housing instability are more vulnerable to mental health issues. If you are homeless or you're having housing instability in your life, you by very nature, you're going to be living with some level of depression, and that can contribute to and if you already have mental health issues, then that can contribute to the development or exacerbation of those conditions. And social substance abuse. Housing instability is often linked to higher rates of substance abuse because we in the industry we like to call it self-medication. If
Mm.
you're depressed and having anxiety and you've never had it at a level where you've thought the need you've felt the need to go get mental health support, you're going to do something yourself to address that. And a lot of people who are experiencing housing instability will revert to alcohol or drugs to alleviate some of the anxiety and depression that they're going through. You may have issues like lack of access to supportive resources. You know, a lot of people, I started this conversation off by saying that Metrocare Services is one of the unrealized, unknown gems of resources here in our community. Well, a lot of people don't know where to go to get supportive resources. So an individual without stable housing may face difficulties in consistently attending appointments, accessing medication, or engaging in therapeutic interventions because they don't know where to go, or because of the things that they're experiencing mental health wise, they can't motivate themselves to get out there and get those services. It also, when you're having housing instability, it contributes to the cycle of poverty. You know, economic challenges contribute to both housing instability and mental health issues, creating a complex interplay of factors that can be challenging to break. And it also contributes to social isolation. If you've got an unstable housing situation, you may be embarrassed to reveal to your loved ones and your personal support uh, uh, network that you're going through this. And to if you don't if you don't go out and address that with your personal support and reveal, then you can contribute to more psychological distress over the long haul. We at Metrocare, we believe we play a vital role in addressing all of those interconnected issues. We provide services such as permanent supportive housing assistance, mental health counseling, substance abuse treatment, and support programs to break the cycle of homelessness and its negative impact on mental health.
Thank you for that, Ikenna. That is just a great overview of how housing instability isn't a problem in and of itself, and how it really creates a domino effect, if you will, in instigating a lot of other issues like substance abuse, mental health, that then go hand in hand as issues and challenges in addition to housing stability. And I can tell you, very, very early on in adulthood, like when I first started my career many, many, many years ago, I had a housing stability issue. And I can tell you, I only had to deal with it for maybe 2 months, but it was probably one of the most stressful periods of my own life. So I can only imagine what people with children or other responsibilities, in addition to working or finding a job, face when they're having a housing crisis. So thank you for that. If we kind of shift gears for a little bit and talk about Metrocare's permanent supportive housing program, we'd love to hear more about the organization's work in that area. Specifically, how many people are you assisting? And in these times, are you seeing an increased demand for permanent supportive housing? But just as a level set before you go into Metrocare's work in that issue, could you provide us all with a brief definition by what we mean when we say permanent supportive housing?
Absolutely. So a lot of times when we talk about permanent supportive housing, people don't hear the permanent part and they don't really hear the supportive part. So when we talk about permanent supportive housing, I want to emphasize that this is for many of the people that we have in our permanent supportive housing programs will die in the program. They won't quote unquote graduate to a different level. Now we're always providing supports to make that happen if this possible, like to help them get jobs, help them get income. help them move in that direction. But a good portion of our population, somewhere probably north of 70%, will always be in our supportive housing until the day they die. The other piece of it is the supportive part. For the majority of the individuals in our programs, without the supports of our case management, our medication management with our prescribers, our SOAR trained, which is benefits assistance, acquisition of benefits that you're eligible for assistance. Without all of those kind of supports, they wouldn't be successful just giving them the housing. You know, you can give somebody four walls to live in, but if they don't have the skill set to maintain it properly and to know how to communicate with the property management about repair issues and all those things, then they're not going to be successful. And you're really giving them just temporary housing. And so to make it permanent, you have to have those supports for people who are suffering from severe mental illness and substance abuse issues to get to stabilize and be in a safe, affordable over the long term. You need those supports. So it's important. Every word in that statement, permanent supportive housing, it's important. Obviously, the housing is the fundamental foundation of it, but without the support and without the knowledge that this will be long term, then it won't be successful in general.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think when people hear permanent supportive housing, they key in on housing and don't see how it's really almost a three-legged stool, if you will, as a housing intervention. How many people are you assisting per year in your permanent supportive housing program right now? And are you seeing an uptick in demand for this type of service or program?
So in our program right now, we are somewhere right around like 450 individuals living in our supportive housing programs, with a goal of increasing that to well over 500 by the end of this um, fiscal year.
Mhm.
We have a man, what we the the incidence of homelessness throughout the country is increasing because the disparity between the have and the have-nots is increasing. I know, everybody watches the news or reads the newspaper, I guess, or looks online at the newspaper. The days of reading the newspaper physically are probably gone for most of us, but anyhow, and you can see reporting after reports of the affordable housing crisis in our communities. And so what's happened is the quote unquote traditional homeless population is still there. It's still robust, but there are far more people because of the economics of housing that are falling into housing instability. And that's increasing the proportion of people who are in the homelessness level of housing instability. So it is increasing, but our community is doing a much more effective job than it has in the past of trying to address it and frankly get ahead of it. This last year, we reduced our homeless population by a significant amount, and we have gotten momentum going forward. One of the things that was really good about getting that momentum is the ARPA funds that were
Mhm.
given to all of our communities due to the COVID.
Mhm.
Everybody had an opportunity especially in our metropolitan areas to devote a significant amount of that money strategically to address their housing instability issues in their community. Housing Forward, along with Metrocare Services and other partners, did a very good job, I believe, in using that money strategically to directly influence the problems in our community with housing instability. And we are getting recognition for that. New York Times has had an article recently. There was an article in the Dallas Morning News recently that is highlighting that although we're not as a community the top in addressing that they are recognizing that Dallas is moving uh, strategically in that direction. But there's much more to do. This is just we're really at the beginning of building a foundation, or if you will, a safety net for the people with housing instability in our community. We have an opportunity right now, and we'll probably talk about that later in on this interview with the bond issuance to address that in a more robust manner so that we can replace some of the resources that are, because the ARPA thing is a one-time thing, unless we have another pandemic, that's a one-time thing. That's not something that we can depend on going forward. So we have to build some resources so we can continue that momentum in the future. And the bond
Yeah.
issuance is a way to do that.
That's really good to hear that Dallas is a success story in that respect. I know if you look at some of the national headlines, um, the story is that some cities are seeing some of the biggest jumps in homelessness that they have in a long time. So to hear that Dallas is working in the right direction, having success in these times is pretty awesome to hear. And kind of going along the lines of just staying on this thread of success, could you share a short story of a story of success, if you will, of someone who has been positively impacted by your housing programs that has had to deal with its intersection of housing instability, mental health issues, maybe substance abuse or other types of issues that have intersected in a way that left them in a pretty desperate state that you've been able to help move forward?
Sure, absolutely. We have a gentleman in our supportive housing program who's been in our program since about 2000 or 2010. And when he moved into the program, he had been homeless for over a year. And the reason why he had been homeless for that long is because he had undiagnosed severe social anxiety.
Mm.
And the way that manifested is that he's a very capable individual, but the way that manifested was that he was unable to deal with significant numbers of people, like at a retail or level or on the job level. He just could not cope with that level of people around him. And so he was homeless, and we moved him into one of our projects in a high opportunity community here in Dallas.
Mhm.
And in that community, because he is capable and such, and on a one-on-one level, he is socially comfortable. He was able to, and he's very good with his hands mechanically. He was able to become essentially, this community that we're talking about has an older population of rather wealthy people in it. It's a community in transition. And he was able to make connections in that community where he started providing for one of the elderly neighbors uh, assistance with repairs on cars and mowing lawns, that kind of thing, and on a voluntary basis. Well, that community member talked to other older community members who needed similar assistance in that neighborhood. And he became the fix-it guy for the neighborhood, and they would, sometimes give him artwork and such. So the reason I mentioned this story is because the property that he was at, we had to move some people from, and there was only going to be a sum of the people of the number of people we had there that were going to have to be allowed to stay. The community reached out to me and some members of the community and said, please let him stay because we need
Mm.
him in our community. He is a
Wow.
resource. He's a positive asset in our community that we want to remain here. And he wanted to stay there because of that outreach, mainly of the people saying they wanted him there. And so that is the reason I tell that story. So now he's very stable. He's doing well. He still struggles with his social anxiety, and he's not, he hasn't gotten a job, but he is embedded in that community in a positive way. So that community has benefited from his presence. And a lot of times people have a fear that, oh, we're going to let these people, quote unquote, move into our community, and it's going to hurt my property value, and it's going to hurt my quality of life and everything. And the truth of it is that he is more exemplary of what happens when people who are suffering from housing instability get into a community that's safe and affordable, that they feel comfortable in. They embrace it and they don't leave because they have a history of being unstable and being in unstable situations. They want to stay in the ones that have finally worked for them, and they want to be a positive effect on the community.
Wow, that is an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you alluded to one of the most, in my opinion, one of the biggest benefits with either being a homeowner or having some sense of permanent housing in some way is the community that you can build that you can't quantify, but obviously the community that got built around him by having more of a permanent housing situation sounds like it's made the difference in his life for years to come. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
So you alluded to this in your earlier comments, but now I want to kind of dive into the city's 2024 bond program. Basically ask you first, what are the future goals of Metrocare in terms of providing more permanent supportive housing for individuals and families with mental health challenges? And how would an increase in funding from something like the city's 2024 bond program better support that vision or future goals or work towards those future goals?
Sure. So just to give a little history of Metrocare's involvement in supportive housing, we've been in the supportive housing arena for over 2 decades now. And the majority of that time, we have been we have gotten grants to provide the services and to provide the money to rent units um, from the private multifamily sector. But over the last few years, probably pre-COVID, we started realizing that the lack of affordable housing and the retention of the affordable housing going in the wrong way meant that we needed to think more strategically about how we can be a part of the solution. And so my CEO, Dr. John Burris, and I discussed getting involved in the development of affordable housing. And so in the last year and a half, we started to purchase affordable housing, multifamily apartment buildings, and renovate them and retain them as affordable housing for the population that we're discussing today, with the goal of increasing our footprint in ownership of multifamily properties to about 400 units over the next 4 years. Right now, we house approximately 450 people. We'd like to have, between the units that we own and more supportive housing grants for rental, we'd like to be up at 1,000 people in housing in the next 4 years. And that's our internal goal. The way that the bond issuance from the city would help us do that is providing money to purchase and or build more affordable housing for. And when I say affordable housing, and I think this is important to define as well, a lot of time affordable housing is a generalized term that is very, very broad.
Mhm.
And it can go up to, people say it's from 0% to 80% of average monthly income, basically. But if you're at 80% AMI here in Dallas, you're making mid 50s. Whereas if you're at less than 30% of AMI, then you're making less than $22,000.
Mhm.
So the needs of the population that have no income or are making less than 22,000 are far different in general than the needs of people who are making $54,000 plus a year. So what we focus on at Metrocare is we want to focus on the people from 0 to maybe about 50% AMI. So the most vulnerable people in our population who really just don't have the financial resources or the support network to provide housing for themselves. And we are hoping that the bond issue, that in this bond package, that there will be a recognition that there's a need for affordable housing in general, but that there should be specific set asides for some of the most vulnerable, as opposed to some of the closer to the top of that scale.
Mhm. That's great. So, I mean, it really sounds like if you were to get money from the organization were to get money from the city's 2024 bond program, you're ready to go. Like you have a plan, you've already been taking steps to act on it. And it sounds like funding from a bond program would just allow you to accelerate the vision that's already there and the work that's already happening.
Yeah, I think, and it's not just us, but I think throughout the community, there's a lot of momentum to develop this housing and to provide these resources to the people who are in need. We just need the city to have a higher stake to devote more of their resources to the cause. In
Mhm.
this town, and it's not, I want to emphasize also in this conversation that we're not talking about an either or proposition here in Dallas. We have the resources. This is a community that, what was it, like a decade ago maybe, that we did a $500 million bond to build a convention hotel. And that passed. And we spent that $500 million on that hotel. And it's a fabulous hotel.
Mhm.
But at that same time, we were devoting less than $10 million to the homeless population in our city on an annualized basis. So it's a willpower to prioritize the need for these people over the need for a new hotel or what have you. That's what we're talking about here. And I think a lot of times when the layman is hearing about these issues, they think it's more of like an either or. Either we can do this or we can do this. And I'm saying we can do all of that, but we need to prioritize what's most important. And I believe that the most important thing for government to do is to provide a safety net for the most vulnerable people in that population.
Thank you. I can't think of a better way to end our conversation. We'll have to leave it there. So, Ikenna, again, thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing your unique perspective on the housing crisis and the incredible success that Metrocare is having, specifically with people who are at the intersection of housing instability, mental health issues, and sometimes substance abuse as well. So again, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you just all the success possible for Metrocare in 2024. But before we sign off, just wanted to share a few parting words of my own. Make sure you follow the Dallas Housing Coalition on all of its socials for updates on how you can get involved and stay connected with our ongoing Housing for All webinar. Also, make sure that you visit the Dallas Housing Coalition website at dallashousingcoalition.com to learn more about its member organizations like Metrocare, which we heard so much from today. You can also join the Dallas Housing Coalition online while you're at the website. And also, while you're at our website, learn more about the issues discussed today, especially Dallas's 2024 bond program, for which the Dallas City Council will be deciding how much of its $1.1 billion of bond funding will be allocated to city programs in the coming weeks. Thank you all for joining us today and tuning in to our third Housing for All webinar, where we discuss whether Dallas is big and if it is truly big enough for everyone. Tune in next week, Friday, January 12th at 11 a.m. for our next